IELTS Listening, version 58033. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1 on page 2 of your question booklet. Part 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a UK company representative and a woman who wants to hire a motorhome. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, Coxhead Motorhomes, Dave Sparrow speaking.
Oh, hi. I would like to inquire about renting an RV for a week. I think you call them motorhomes in the UK?
Yes, we do. Well, we should be able to help you there. So what type were you thinking of?
It's just for 2 of us, me and my husband.
Right. The best model for you would be the 2-berth-end kitchen. That's the one with the sitting and sleeping area in the middle and the other facilities at the back.
Yes, that sounds good. And what sort of price is that?
The cost starts at £545 a week, depending on when you want it for. If it's high season, it goes up to £755.
And is that all-inclusive?
There's what we call a damage deposit. That's fully refundable if the vehicle is returned in good condition. That depends on the driver's age. You do have to be at least 21 to drive one of these vehicles.
That's okay. I'm 24.
Well, in that case, if you're driving the vehicle, the deposit would be £460. It goes down to £250 for drivers of 26 and above.
And do I have to pay more if my husband drives as well?
No, extra drivers are free.
Great. We have to pay a supplement for that in the States.
So you've driven one of these before, have you?
Yes, but only in America. Oh, that reminds me, about my driving license. I've got an international one. Is that okay?
That's fine.
And I just have a few questions about the motorhomes, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
So, first of all, can you tell me how old your vehicles are on average?
They're all less than 30 months, so you're getting a vehicle in peak condition.
Okay. And I'd prefer an automatic gearbox if possible. Can you do that?
I'm afraid not. They're all manual. Will that be a problem?
Oh, I guess I'll be okay. It was just a thought.
And also, our customers sometimes ask if they can bring their pets along, so if you wanted to do that, it's fine, as long as you make sure they're properly looked after.
Oh, well, that won't apply to us, but it's nice to know.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
And I suppose there are cooking facilities in the motorhome?
Yes, there's everything you need for cooking.
Like a fridge?
Yes, and you've got a built-in microwave too.
And you said it sleeps 2, so is that 2 singles or a double?
You can arrange the bed either way. And you've got a CD player, and this year we've installed a television in every motorhome as well.
Right. Well, that might be useful if we have a rainy day. Oh, and what about SatNav? I don't suppose that's included, is it?
Sure. We've had that in all our mobile homes for a few years now. Our customers really appreciate it.
Great. Oh, and what about a rack for my bicycle? I'd like to take it along.
Yes, we can arrange for that.
Now, what happens about electricity? I think we'll probably be staying at campsites most of the time, so presumably there'll be mains hookup there. But we're going to a music festival for a couple of days, and I don't think they have hookup there, so we'll need a generator.
It's not included, but we can hire one for you. It'll be £50 for a week.
Okay. Now about collection, I know your company's near Salisbury. We'll be coming from London, so what's the best way for us to get to you? We'll be arriving by train.
Well, if you want, we can pick you up from the station. The nearest station to us is Greatley.
I'm sorry?
Greatley. That's spelled Gratley. There's no charge for that, just let us know when you'll be arriving. So would you like to go ahead and book a vehicle now?
Yes. So my name is Kirsty, and my...
That is the end of Part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 1. Part 2. You will hear a radio talk by the director of a theatre called the Citadel. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Today we're pleased to welcome Jan Beamish, who's the director of the Citadel Theatre. So, Jan, what does the theatre have in store for us in the next few months?
Well, at present we've got Comedy Shop, which features 5 comedians doing sketches. It's very popular because some of the people watching the show have the chance to come and join in the sketches. It's had excellent reviews. Then, after that, there's a new play called Seekers. This is a very beautiful story about childhood, featuring Abigail Garrick, who's one of the country's top actors. But sadly, there are no more tickets left for any of the performances. We're also putting on The Hidden Box, which is a delightful fantasy about a search for lost treasure. It goes down very well with youngsters, particularly preschool, and actually the whole family will enjoy it too. There are still quite a number of tickets left for afternoon performances. For 1 week only, we've been lucky enough to secure Night Shift, a fascinating new play based on the diary kept by a factory owner in the 19th century. It's quite a disturbing piece with some violent scenes, so it could be upsetting for some people, but it's certainly well worth seeing if you want to get a new perspective on the industry that built up our town. Next month sees the start of a production called John Dory, a light-hearted show based on stories from the local area. Surprisingly, perhaps, It's played to packed houses in other countries in recent months. Even though the audiences knew nothing about the area, they responded to the humour and warmth of the characters. And finally, I mustn't forget Vital Signs. You may well have seen this at the cinema, where it won awards both in Britain and in the US. But this new stage version really brings to life the moving true story of a struggling young singer trying to find success.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
And this summer, the Citadel is once again supporting the Youth Arts Festival. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. Well, we're already planning a whole range of activities for young people leading up to this year's Youth Arts Festival, and we're looking for anyone from 8 to 21 years old who's interested not just in performing but also writing, directing or doing workshops. The deadline for applications is the 15th of March, and then we aim to have the schedule for the different activities put together by the end of April. That's just a few months before the festival itself, which will be in the first week of August. If anyone would like to put on a performance themselves, there's still time to apply. You can download the application form from our website. Make sure you complete all the relevant sections. You need to briefly describe what happens in the performance. If you want, you can also send a DVD or photos of the performance. You will be expected to provide your own costumes and music, by the way. There's also a competition for anyone who's interested in actually writing a short play. The winning play will be performed at the festival, directed by Steve Taylor from the theatre here, and the writer will have the chance to play one of the roles if he or she wants to. Last year's winning play was even shown on national TV afterwards. The highlight of the festival will be a production of the experimental play Calcammon, acted and written entirely by young people. The play is all about communication, and each actor writes a sort of made-up language for his or her role during the performance, which no one else can understand. We hope it will be a really enjoyable ending to all these months of preparation, and that the whole experience will be a rewarding one for everyone who's taken part.
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2.
Part 3. You will hear a business student called Lara getting feedback on the first draft of her assignment from her tutor. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, Lara. Thank you for coming in to discuss the work you've done so far on your assignment on multinational companies. I've had a good look at it.
Thank you.
I'm interested in your research on this chocolate and its brand image. You've shown that it's quite different in different markets, and the differences in advertising campaigns, how in some countries it's sold in pretty upmarket places, whereas in others it's sold in supermarkets that appeal to a different customer. Did you know that they use different amounts of caffeine and sugar to appeal to tastes in different countries too?
Oh, I didn't. I'll look into that too. Do you think this next section on the aim of global marketing is clear?
Well, I got a bit lost when you talked about starting production in another country. The link to the aim of global marketing could be clearer, but what I thought worked really well was your explanation of how a huge increase in sales is what most companies who go global are after. Well done. You could then link that to profits to finish off that section.
Yes, that's down on my plan. Another thing that's grabbed my attention is the messages for young people in advertising by multinationals.
You could follow up on that thought. Other moral issues come up. For example, the supermarket chain who offered free plastic bags in a market which is very environment conscious. Their aim had been to bring in lots of new customers quickly by getting their name seen everywhere in town, but they'd forgotten that market didn't want any more plastic polluting their environment.
A big mistake. There seems to be a sort of arrogance on the part of some multinationals.
In what way?
Well, it's okay if the multinational comes into your country, takes over a company, and introduces better working conditions or new machinery. But it's the way they often bring in their own management team who ride roughshod over everyone and who don't exactly go in for consultation at local level.
That's an interesting observation. What do you have in mind for the last section?
I'd like to look at distribution. It can be key to the success or failure of so many businesses. Of course, there's the whole idea of managing time and what happens when customers don't get their goods on time, but I'd like to read up on the effects of managing all distribution from just one office, because if a company isn't used to that and it's suddenly introduced, it can be chaos. I looked at the issue of stock control in last term's paper, so I'd rather not revisit that.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now you need to finish off with a company case study. And I see you've been looking into some possibilities. What did you find out about Drummond's?
At first I thought they'd be good to illustrate the importance of getting the workforce right, but I'm not sure I'd have enough information. But what I could use them for is to show how you have to base your company in the right part of the world to benefit from tax advantages. That's what Drummond's did.
Yes, that could be good. There's also Multiplan. I read recently that they've made the classic mistake of going for an international market before they've really grown enough, and that's causing them some headaches. So no matter where they'd expanded their business to abroad, they'd have faced the same problems.
What about Elbeeds? There are really detailed figures showing that by going global, they were in a strong position to negotiate rock-bottom prices for their materials because they were buying in bulk.
Yes, they would be a good choice because it would allow you to present data effectively. Babis would be good for that too. All the figures relating to their staffing levels before and after going global are available.
Oh, and they're huge, aren't they? I did look at how Emerson went to different companies who provided them with components they needed when they went global, and what a huge difference this made to quality.
So just check through to see which one would give you scope to develop a good case study with a clear focus.
Thank you.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 3.
Part 4. You will hear a lecturer in environmental science talking about soundscapes, which are the sounds that surround us in our daily lives. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today I want to talk to you about something called a soundscape. We all know what a landscape is. That is the view that you can see from any particular point. As the name implies, a soundscape comprises all the sounds you can hear at a given time in a particular environment. The term was first coined by a Canadian called Murray Schafer, a famous composer who became interested in the concept in the late 1960s and early 1970s. One important aspect of the soundscape is that it is not random abstract noise, nor is it simply mindless background sound such as the recorded music you hear so often in public places, like elevators. No, the sounds in a soundscape generally have meaning and can be understood and decoded. The sounds of which a soundscape is composed can be divided into 3 types. First, biophony. These are sounds emitted by living creatures, for example by frogs, which you undoubtedly know can be extremely loud when heard in trees on a dark, wet night. Some people love that sound. Then, the second type of soundscape sound is termed geophony, and that is sound created by non-biological forces. In our daily life, we're constantly surrounded by these sounds, like the patter of rain, which I myself find incredibly soothing and relaxing. Some, of course, would disagree. Lastly, we have the sounds lumped together under the heading of anthrophony, and these refer to sounds made by humans, an altogether noisy group, I'd say. Anyhow, the study of the soundscape has attracted many people over the years, including an American called Bernie Krause, who has spent more than 40 years recording the sounds of nature. He came to several interesting conclusions about the sounds he recorded. He maintained that every sound has what is referred to as its own signature, which makes it as recognizable and identifiable as when a person writes his own name. Furthermore, Krause concluded that the sounds of various organisms in an environment are harmonious in 2 ways. Firstly, they fit together in terms of loudness, and thus they don't drown each other out. And secondly, the frequency of each sound is also harmonious with the other sounds. Scientists who study soundscapes say that overall changes in the sound patterns in a certain place are often important first indicators of a change that is taking place in the climate of that particular area. This in itself would make a better understanding of soundscapes valuable in trying to assess what is going on in the environment around the world today. Change in the soundscape may also be a first warning sign of pollution of many kinds. In fact, it was an absence of birdsong that alerted writer and early ecologist Rachel Carson to the environmental devastation being caused by the understandable attempt by American farmers to control insects. Soundscape ecologists are using ever more sophisticated equipment to study the sounds of nature, including the state-of-the-art acoustic sound recorders. The data from these are used to create three-dimensional maps of acoustic features plotted across a landscape. These can provide a valuable permanent record of the soundscape at a particular time and can be used to note potentially significant changes, such as variation by season. Now, when I give talks, the most common question that I get asked is, what's the loudest creature in the animal world? The answer is probably debatable, but it's not a roaring lion or a bellowing elephant. To the best of my knowledge, it's something found in the ocean. A shrimp, less than 4 centimeters long, which makes an explosive sound underwater with its single claw, the equivalent of about 160 decibels in the air. And that's even more than the noise a rock band makes. Now, if you have a rock band...
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.